You are not detached from the version of yourself who possesses everything you desire. You are fundamentally entangled with it. The quantum field is awaiting a signal, and that signal is not merely what you want. It is who you resolve to be. A version of you already exists who is living the life you dream of. This version is not a theoretical concept. It exists as a specific frequency. Through the enigmatic principles of quantum entanglement, you are intrinsically linked to this version right now. Not at some point in the future, not after you have healed, and not after you have mastered manifestation, but at this very moment. The real question isn't whether your dream life is attainable. The question is why you haven't yet attuned yourself to it. If your life feels stagnant and your objectives seem unattainable, it's not because they are distant. It is because your current identity remains entangled with a version of yourself that is defined by doubt, procrastination, and self-sabotage. However, the instant you shift who you perceive yourself to be, not just in your thoughts, but in your fundamental state of being, everything in your reality begins to reorganize itself. The truth is, most people never grasp how this mechanism functions. They spend their entire lives attempting to compel change from the outside in through hustling, struggling, and pushing. Even when they embark on a spiritual path, they often perpetuate the same error. They try to visualize their way into a new existence instead of collapsing the very identity that anchors them to the old one. This is why the following content is not just another discourse on the law of attraction. It is a deconstruction of reality itself and a manual for collapsing timelines. This is the intersection of two immensely powerful concepts: quantum entanglement and quantum jumping. Entanglement clarifies why your energy influences matter, why your internal state dictates your outcomes, and why even your subconscious programming does not operate in a vacuum. You are perpetually broadcasting a signal into the quantum field. This signal is not composed of your words. It is your vibration. It is the manner in which your identity interacts with the field of possibility. Quantum jumping, conversely, is frequently misunderstood. It is not a form of magic or escapism. It is a recalibration of identity that enables you to transition between entangled realities, realities where different versions of you already exist, waiting to be observed, activated, and experienced. And this is where it becomes truly mind-bending. You have already experienced this phenomenon. That instance when you made a resolute decision and everything changed instantly, that was a jump, that abrupt shift in perception where you saw yourself in a new light, even for a fleeting second. That was a ripple across timelines. The profound gut feeling that you are destined for something greater is not a fantasy. It is your future self seeping through the cracks of your current reality. In the quantum realm, time is not linear, it is layered. This means your future self can extend backward in time just as readily as you can project forward. You are engaged in a constant feedback loop with the version of you who has already succeeded. The connection is live and active right now. That is the code, the ultimate secret. The field does not require your effort. It requires your coherence, your clarity, and a frequency that matches what you are asking for, not with your words, but with your entire being. Therefore, in this video, we will dismantle everything you thought you knew about manifestation and provide a step-by-step guide to the most potent tool you have never fully utilized: how quantum entanglement makes timeline jumping not only possible but inevitable once you know how to apply it. This will not be about visualization, wishing, or trying. This is about identity collapse and frequency alignment. Reality is code. In the subsequent section, I will demonstrate precisely how entanglement functions, not merely with subatomic particles, but within your own life. We will discuss the science, but more crucially, I will show you how it explains everything that has ever felt off about your reality. The version of you who has everything you desire is already connected to you. Let's discover why you haven't made the jump yet. Quantum entanglement is not a mere theory. It is one of the most rigorously documented yet least understood phenomena in modern physics. In essence, it dictates that two particles, once linked, remain connected in such a way that altering one instantaneously affects the other, irrespective of the distance separating them. Einstein famously termed it spooky action at a distance, but the implications of this for your consciousness identity, and reality are seldom discussed. If matter can behave in this manner, why can't you? You are not an isolated particle in a void. You are a living, breathing field of consciousness. Like those particles, you are entangled not only with other people, but with versions of yourself that exist across different timelines, versions that made different choices, followed different intuitions, healed instead of fled, jumped instead of hesitated, and chose instead of doubted. You are not disconnected from them. You are either vibrating in sync or out of sync with them. This dynamic is what creates the version of yourself that the field reflects back to you as your life. However, there is a glitch in the system for most people. They remain entangled with the version of themselves that is perpetually in survival mode, still holding on, still fearful. This is not a conscious choice, but a result of deep conditioning through repetition, trauma, and identity loops. So ingrained they are no longer questioned. And whatever you remain entangled with, you reinforce, broadcast, and collapse into your reality. So when people lament, "I've tried to manifest, but it doesn't work," the problem is not their effort. It is that their signal, the deep, unconscious one, is still broadcasting from the version of them that does not believe, that does not move, and that does not act as if the new reality is already theirs. The quantum field is strict in this regard. It does not respond to wanting, begging, or even visualization alone. It responds to frequency, and your frequency is not dictated by what you think about for 5 minutes a day. It is shaped by what you embody every single moment. You are the observer, and the observer collapses the timeline. But which version of you is doing the observing? This is the question most people never ask, and it is why most people never jump. Jumping is not something you do. It is something you become. You cannot quantum jump into your dream life if you are still operating from the version of you who feels unworthy of it. You cannot shift timelines by visualizing success while making decisions rooted in fear. The field is indifferent to your words. It cares about what you are entangled with and what you reinforce through your behavior, focus, and energy. At times, the version of you who has what you want is actively pulling on the cord. You sense it in flashes, in dreams, in moments where reality feels thin. You catch glimpses of that other life, not because you are imagining it, but because you are bleeding into it, and it is bleeding into you. The connection is already active. The question is, how much longer will you ignore it? In the next section, I will show you precisely how to re-entangle your field, not just through belief or mindset, but through direct, intentional identity collapse. That is how we jump, move, and stop looping. But before we proceed, pause. If this message resonates, it means you are remembering, not learning. That is entanglement activating. If you felt something shift, hit subscribe. Not for me, but for the version of you ready to come online. And tell me in the comments, what timeline are you tired of living? Name it. That is the first step. You have been entangled with the version of yourself that doubts, delays, and compromises. However, the version of you that has already made the leap is not external. It is already observing. The sole reason you haven't become it is because the identity you are currently collapsing continually drags you back into the same narrative. It is time to rewrite the observer. You see, in every moment, you are selecting which version of yourself is looking through your eyes. Most people are unaware of this. They believe they are their thoughts, their habits, their personality. But all of that is merely software. What is often forgotten is that you are the one choosing the operating system, and you can reboot at any time. This is the fundamental principle of quantum jumping, not becoming something new, but choosing to cease observing from the self that is entangled with limitation. The jump does not occur through action, it occurs through collapse. So how is this accomplished? Let's begin with what you are not going to do. You will not visualize, you will not chant, and you will not close your eyes and pretend to be somewhere else. Not yet. That is what the old self attempts to do to escape. But jumping is not escaping, it is reclaiming. We start with one thing only: awareness. Ask yourself this question right now, without flinching. Who is the version of me that is currently choosing this life? What are their beliefs, their fears, their core assumptions about reality? How do they speak to themselves when no one is listening? Truly feel into it. You will begin to notice a pattern, a particular flavor of energy, a weight in your chest, or a tightness in your throat. That is not a coincidence. It is the imprint of the current observer, and you have been collapsing reality through it for years. Now here is the next question, and it may be the most important one you ever ask yourself. Am I willing to let that version of me die? Because that is what a jump truly is. It is not a leap across timelines. It is a funeral. It is the quiet, conscious, sacred death of the self that can no longer carry your future. And most people are unwilling to let it go. Not because it is good, but because it is familiar. Familiar pain, familiar struggle, familiar identity. Even misery can feel like home when you have decorated it with enough reasons to stay. But now, in this moment, you have a choice. Here is the method. It does not have a fancy name. It is not a technique. It is a conscious realignment in 3 parts. Part 1, witness. Sit in absolute presence with the version of you that you are ready to collapse. Let them speak. Let them be seen, not judged, seen. Most timelines do not fade because they are resisted. They fade because they are outgrown with grace. Part 2, sever. This is where you shift the entanglement. Speak aloud or internally a simple truth. This is no longer who I am. I release this version. I collapse this observer. You will feel resistance. That is natural. The old self fights for its life, but it only has power if you believe its voice is still yours. Part 3. Choose. Once the field is clear, choose the new identity, but do not just think it. Embody it. Stand like them. Breathe like them. Decide from their frequency. Do not ask, what would the version of me who has everything do? Ask, what does that version no longer tolerate, and stop tolerating it now. These steps are not a one-time ritual. They are a way of being. Each day, each breath is a reinforcement of the new entanglement, and over time, not in years, but in energetic cycles, the field will adjust because it has no choice. That is the rule of quantum mechanics. The observer collapses the wave into a particle. Reality conforms to the identity of the observer, but only when that identity is consistent. And here is the beauty of all this. The version of you who already lives the life you want is not a stranger. It is not some future avatar. It is a memory encoded in your energetic field, a path that is still active, waiting for you to walk it. You have questioned the authority of your own past, challenged the identity that has been holding the pen to your reality. That alone begins the shift. You might not feel like you have jumped yet, but you have already moved. Something cracked open, a thread loosened, a signal was sent, and that is how every quantum leap begins, not with fireworks, but with frequency, which brings us here. You did it. You collapsed the old self. You released the version of you that kept you looping. You stood inside a new identity, even if just for a few minutes. And in that moment, the field shifted. A new observer took command of your life. But now comes the part no one talks about, the recalibration. Because jumping does not just mean entering a new timeline. It means becoming stable in it. Like any system that has been running on the same frequency for years, when you suddenly install a new operating identity, there is going to be noise. You will start to notice strange things. People might respond to you differently, not because you have said anything new, but because they feel it. Energy precedes language. Behavior shifts subtly. Some conversations will no longer resonate. Some relationships will shake, not because you are rejecting them, but because they are tuned to the old version of you, the one you just let go. But the most unexpected part is this. The old timeline may try to pull you back, not as punishment, not as failure, but as a vibrational echo. You might suddenly feel overwhelmed, emotional, uncertain, not because you are wrong, but because you have stepped out of a familiar frequency and your nervous system is still catching up. That is normal. Imagine a radio finally changing the station after years of static. For a while, there will be overlap, mixed signals, ghost frequencies, and in that noise, the old identity might whisper, "See, nothing changed. You're still the same." This is the test, not of strength, but of clarity. Because reality does not shift cleanly, it shifts quantumly. The moment you step into a new state, everything that does not match it begins to fall away, and what falls away often fights back before it goes. You will be tempted to interpret discomfort as failure, but discomfort is just confirmation that the old code is breaking. And this is the moment most people undo their jump. They collapse back into the old observer, not because it was better, but because it was familiar. So, how do you stay inside the new timeline? You do not force it. You do not fake it. You anchor it. Anchoring does not mean obsessively affirming or pretending everything is fine when it is not. It means responding to life from the new identity, even when the world has not caught up yet. This is the real test of coherence, when the bank account still shows scarcity, but you respond with abundance, when the relationship still feels stuck, but you speak from wholeness, when fear knocks on the door, and you answer as your highest self, not your oldest one. Every time you choose the new observer, in thought, in feeling, in action, you stabilize the field. Because the quantum realm does not reward effort, it reflects consistency. The universe is not testing you, it is listening to you, and every subtle vibration you emit tells it who you believe yourself to be. So instead of asking, why hasn't my new reality shown up yet? Ask, what version of me have I been reinforcing today? That is where the jump becomes real. Not in moments of inspiration, but in moments of doubt, when you choose again and again to be the one you decided to become. And yes, you will wobble, you will forget, you will collapse back into old patterns sometimes. But each time you remember, each time you breathe and return to the new identity, you retune the field. Eventually, the old frequencies lose strength, they fade, and what once felt like trying becomes natural, effortless, obvious. You are not faking it until you make it. You are feeling it until you stabilize it. There is a difference. And at some point, without even noticing, you will look around and realize the external has changed, not because you forced it, but because you became unshakable in your frequency. You stopped reacting from lack. You stopped negotiating with limitation. You stopped giving airtime to the self that never believed in you. And when that voice no longer dominates the channel, reality has no choice but to update the script. And so it begins. Not the leap that already happened, not the test that was part of the noise. This is the moment where everything inside you slows, recalibrates, and settles, where the new version of you becomes the only version that makes sense. Because something subtle happens when you choose coherence over chaos again and again. The new identity stops feeling like a mask. It stops feeling like a performance. And without noticing it, you have become the version you use to visualize. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped feeding the one who could not hold it. This is the real integration, where decisions feel quieter but deeper, where responses come from truth instead of protection, where you no longer debate with old thoughts because they do not belong to you anymore. They were echoes from a previous field, from a previous you, and they no longer survive here. This is the quantum made practical, not philosophy, not poetry, but your life. You will notice that old patterns stop activating you. You will feel emotions arise and dissolve without needing to become your identity. You will speak differently. You will move differently, not because you are trying to act like someone new, but because you are no longer pretending to be someone you are not. And that is the full loop. The observer who used to collapse your reality has been replaced, not by magic, but by choice, repetition, breath, awareness. And in doing so, the entire field around you, people, opportunities, coincidences, begins to arrange itself into new patterns. Not because reality is rewarding you, but because reality is simply responding to the truth of who you are now. So what happens next? You live it. You walk. You wake, you feel, and each time life hands you contrast, as it will, you ask yourself one simple question. Which version of me is being invited right now? That is it. That is the code. That is the gate. You are not meant to live from control. You are meant to live from signal, and your signal becomes clearer with every aligned choice, every regulated breath, every moment of remembrance. Because, truthfully, you did not jump into another timeline. You collapsed the illusion of separation between you and the version of you who was always waiting, that life was never out of reach, that self was never unreachable. The entanglement was always active. You just stopped ignoring it. So now, the only thing left to do is live as if this is normal, because when it becomes normal, it becomes real. Your Your timeline does not upgrade through force. It upgrades through embodiment. Now breathe. Feel what is different in your body. Not what you hope, but what you already know. That is your signal. That is your anchor. That is your proof.